It's a fight to the death for the key city of Kobani in Syria, and Iraqi Kurds are on the march to defend it against the savage assault of these terrorists of ISIS. But are we doing enough from the United States to help them?
Here at home, there are mounting concerns that terrorists could strike again in America. Gary Lane has the story.
Kurdish Peshmerga troops were given a hero's send-off as they crossed the Turkish border into Syria. The Turkish parliament recently gave approval for the fighters, most of them from Iraqi Kurdistan, to cross the border to fight Islamic State fighters in Kobani. ISIS has besieged the town for nearly a month. For days, the Kurds pleaded with the Turks and Western leaders to allow them to join the fight. Now they're on their way, and they're also given much-needed weapons for their effort to drive the jihadists from the Syrian border town. So what is needed beyond the Peshmerga troops? The Pentagon says airstrikes have not stopped ISIS gains. On CBS Face the Nation, Michigan Congressman Mike Rogers suggested one immediate solution is to give the Kurds more U.S. support.
Special forces capability, special capability soldiers, and intelligence officials are needed if you're going to be more impactful. If you put a 20-year plan together to beat ISIL, you'll have 40 years of trouble.
And possible trouble here at home from lone wolf terrorists. The Department of Homeland Security has taken what it terms a precautionary step to beef up security at federal buildings in major U.S. cities. Meanwhile, to America's north in Hamilton, Ontario, Canadians bid farewell to 24-year-old Corporal Nathan Cirillo. He was the soldier shot dead by an Islamic terrorist last week as he guarded the tomb of the unknown soldier. Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper attended the funeral, along with Cirillo's 5-year-old son.
Canadians, we will persevere, taking strength from the legacy of service of Corporal Cirillo, and giving thanks all the more for the courage and dedication of all the men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces.
How should Canada and the U.S. respond to prevent more acts of homegrown terror? The recent act of terrorism in Ottawa surprised many and led to heightened security. Canadian Muslim leader Raheel Raza told CBN News tough measures are now needed, including better monitoring of people coming from some Muslim countries.
You know, the Australian government today said that they're going to put a stop to entry into Australia from countries that are carrying the Ebola virus. Radicalization is a virus, and it needs to be treated as such. It is a virus, so if we close off the doors from where this virus is coming, perhaps we'll be able to contain some of the homegrown stuff that we have here.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thanks, Gary. Well, in other news, the Obama administration just can't seem to make up its mind about how to deal with people infected with Ebola. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel is thinking about a plan that would put all troops returning from West Africa in a quarantine-like isolation for 21 days. 9 states have already instituted some form of seclusion, but President Obama still rejects the idea of quarantining American health workers coming home from the Ebola hot zone.
We don't want to discourage our healthcare workers from going to the front lines and dealing with this in an effective way.
Right now, the only Ebola patient in the U.S. is Dr. Craig Spencer, who's being treated at a hospital in New York. He's listed in serious but stable condition. A 29-year-old terminally ill woman has set her own date with death. Brittany Maynard plans to end her life this Saturday by taking advantage of Oregon's physician-assisted suicide law. Paul Strand has this look at this high-profile right-to-die case.
Brittany Maynard is a young newlywed making headlines for choosing to end her life on her own terms. Doctors diagnosed her with terminal brain cancer in April and gave her 6 months to live. She doesn't want to wait that long.
I plan to be surrounded by my immediate family, which is my husband and my mother and my stepfather and my best friend, who's also a physician. I will die upstairs in my bedroom that I share with my husband.
Maynard moved to Oregon to take advantage of the state's assisted suicide law. Doctors there prescribed her a life-ending medication she plans to take on November 1st. Maynard's controversial decision landed her on the cover of People magazine and in the center of a moral and ethical debate over assisted suicide. Currently, 5 states allow patients the right to physician-assisted suicide. Opponents in both the medical field and the faith community want changes to the law.
My heart goes out to Brittany. Honestly, it does. But I would pray that before she swallows that prescription, I would tell her about how the love of Jesus has sustained me.
Joni Erickson Tata is a quadriplegic and a breast cancer survivor. She wrote an open letter to Maynard begging her to reconsider.
The reason I wrote that letter was to not so much influence Brittany, although I hope it does, but to influence the untold thousands of others who now feel that physician-assisted suicide could very well be an option for them.
Many in the medical community agree the so-called death with dignity law creates a slippery slope for physicians and patients. A recent poll by the New England Medical Journal says 67% of doctors oppose assisted suicide. Dr. David Prentice here at the Family Research Council says laws like the one in Oregon open the floodgates to larger ethical issues.
For health professionals, these types of laws pervert the medical field because it takes that do no harm idea and turns it upside down where you are intentionally harming the patient.
Maynard and other advocates of the law argue that it allows patients to maintain their dignity even in the face of a gruesome death. They also say the right to choose death can ease the financial burden of the medical bills for loved ones left behind. Christian author Kara Tippett disagrees. Tippett, a terminally ill mother of 4, says by choosing assisted suicide, Maynard may be doing her loved ones more harm than good. In an open letter, she writes, "In your choosing your own death, you are robbing those that love you with such tenderness, the opportunity of meeting you in your last moments and extending you love in your last breaths."
I just wanted her to know that her breath matters and that her life matters and that we see her and that she's important and that she's loved.
Maynard stands by her decision and hopes it will build momentum to extend the law throughout the country. While she may be the new face of this debate, opponents say her story has reawakened the decades-old fight over the culture of life. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Pat, Maynard's story has certainly become quite a talker.
It's amazing that the so-called liberals are a culture of death. They want to kill babies. They want to kill the terminally ill. They don't seem to honor life. And what we should do is honor life, not hasten death. And it is so easy. Once it starts, you have somebody that's hurting very much, and you stand around their bed and they say, "Really, would you like to take this pill and end your life?" And the person says, "I think so." And so, okay, consent form. And that one is gone. You want to pressure somebody, and you say to them, "Well, would you like to run up huge bills and burden your loved ones? Wouldn't it be easier just to leave this world?" And of course they say, "Well, yes, I don't want to be a burden." And we should fight for life. It is a slippery slope, and I'm sorry, when you see what's being done in Europe, I think Holland aware that it is so bad. The culture of death is so pervasive, and the pressure to end the life of these people, it is really tough. So I really believe we ought to leave some of these things in God's hands. He knows what to do with them.
You know, Pat, if you're alive, there's still hope. There's always hope.
Of course there is.
And so, and she's still young, and we don't know what God could do.
She has brain cancer, but brain cancer can get healed.
Yeah,
God can heal anything.
I have a good friend that recovered from brain cancer that they didn't think she would recover from. So if she's listening, I hope she will choose
She's
life.
a beautiful girl, not too long married, and to say, well, okay, I want to go to Oregon and get them to give me an injection, lethal injection. They put Dr. Kevorkian away in prison for the stuff he was doing, and I think, again, the Hippocratic Oath is very strong. You know, your idea is to do no harm, and I think that's a very important thing. Well, our greatest ally in the Middle East is the state of Israel. But you would never know it when you hear the carping that's coming out of the White House. It is appalling. John.
Pat, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is on the defensive, saying he's under fire because he won't compromise the safety of his country. Those were his first public remarks after an interview quoted a senior Obama administration official calling Netanyahu a word that starts with chicken. The official told The Atlantic the good thing about Netanyahu was that he was scared to launch wars, but the bad thing was he won't reach an accommodation with the Palestinians or Sunni Arabs. Another senior White House official said Netanyahu is a coward on a nuclear Iran and won't launch a preemptive strike. Well, more potential election problems for Democrats. Politico reports the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is putting more money into races even in liberal districts long thought to be safe for Democrats. The concern is they could lose even more seats than expected. Republicans point out many races remain close in both the House and Senate, and a new Washington Post ABC News poll shows another worry for Democrats, with 30% of Hispanics saying it would be good for Republicans to take over the Senate, while only 15% say it would be a bad thing. That's quite a change from 2012, when Hispanics voted heavily for President Obama. And we want to remind you that you can follow CBN News election coverage on cbnnews.com, as well as Facebook and Twitter all throughout the night on Election Day. Pat, this has the potential to be a pretty consequential election.
Without question. There's an excellent editorial in the Wall Street Journal today dealing with the Reid-mandated United States Senate. The Senate has long ceased to be a deliberative body. It is the fiefdom of one senator from a small state of Nevada. And Harry Reid has refused to bring anything controversial up for a vote, anything that might conceivably embarrass any senator for casting a vote. The House will pass many measures with bipartisan majorities. Senate, House Republicans and House Democrats getting together to pass important legislation. They all die in the Senate. He will not allow anything. And I think the United States deserves better. This is supposed to be one of the great deliberative bodies of the democratic world, and he has turned it in, as I say, a perfect personal fiefdom. It almost looks like he's running this like a criminal enterprise. You just cannot believe that any one person could do this kind of thing. And so this is a vote. It's a vote on, Obama said it's a vote on my agenda, but I think more than anything it's a vote on Harry Reid. Do we want the Senate to be open and free, where people of goodwill can meet together to debate the issues of the day and to pass legislation that's good for the country? Or do we want one man from a tiny state to dominate that deliberative body and not allow any of his fellow senators votes on important issues? Wendy.
Amen. All
What's going to happen in West Virginia, by the way?
I don't know.
Well, there's an attractive lady running as a Republican. That's the seat vacated by John Rockefeller.
Shelley Moore Capito?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know her.
You do know her?
Yeah, great lady.
Great lady. Well, she's
interviewed her.
I guess the polls put her way ahead, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you never know about West Virginia. Sometimes
okay, well,
Democrats, sometimes Republicans.
I'll stay out of that one. You go ahead.
All right.
More than 1,000 Southern Baptist church leaders are attending a 3-day conference on marriage hosted by the Southern Baptist Convention in Nashville. It's called The Gospel, Homosexuality, and the Future of Marriage. Leaders say they're expressing their views in a way that's humble and compassionate, but rooted in the belief that marriage is between a man and a woman. Cuba is getting its first new Catholic church in 55 years. The communist government is allowing construction of the new cathedral. It's funded by donations from Catholics in Tampa, Florida. The church is in the western town of Sandino and will hold about 200 people. Cuba was officially an atheist state for decades, and the church suffered intense persecution. But the situation has slowly been improving in recent years. Well, you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.